Hey, welcome back to 1480 WLEA. I'm Amy McManus. On the phone now, we got Bill Noj. How you doing, Bill?
Well, good. How are you today?
I'm just fine. I'm a little fired up, a little ticked
Well,
off.
congratulations on your show, by the way.
Thank
This is
you.
a great
Thank you
effort.
very
I
much.
look forward to working with you on it. I think it's just great that WLEA is giving you the opportunity to have this kind of public discussion.
They're great, great people. Hey, I want to talk a little bit about this package. It's not even one gun law. It's a whole series of new gun laws that the state assembly passed. It's going to the Senate now. I'm just going to read what a couple of our super smart assembly persons said, that this package will help ensure that licensing authorities have the oversight they need to protect the public while balancing the legitimate constitutional rights of gun owners. It just sounds so wonderful. It just sounds so good. But my husband and I are like, oh my gosh, is this going to be the last straw? Are we going to leave this state? The biggest issue we have, and you can fill me in on the details, is every 5 years now I have to go to Bath and re-register my pistol. Correct?
Well, it's a lot worse than that. And, of course, you mentioned leaving the state. Of course, Tom Golisano this week has announced that he is leaving New York State as an official New York resident. And Tom Golisano, the founder of Paychex, probably the most successful businessman in the history of upstate New York in the last 20 years or longer, leaving New York State because of the high taxes. And this gun bill is a reason why a lot of people leave New York State, because this really has nothing to do with guns. It has nothing to do with gun safety. It has nothing to do with crime. It has everything to do with a New York City culture that used to be confined to New York City. They used to be happy to stay in New York City and do what they want to do down there. But it has everything to do with bringing that culture statewide to both Long Island, to all of upstate New York. It's a culture that does not work in upstate, is not appropriate for here, but our upstate New York representatives are either unwilling or unable to do anything about it. So you've got this anti-Second Amendment, anti-rural, anti-farm culture that is being transplanted or extended from the boroughs of New York City to where we live here in upstate New York. And they just don't care. I mean, their attitude is, look, we've got the power, you don't, so you're going to do what we tell you to do. But let's not confuse the issue here. This has nothing to do with crime prevention.
Well, yeah, there's no criminal that's going to follow these laws. That's what I find just so unbelievable. If a person has a criminal intent, it doesn't matter what laws are on the books. They are going to commit that crime. Instead, we're going to get stuck with more infringements on our Second Amendment rights, and there's no justification. They have no reason for it. They're just. Sometimes I think they think we're all, like you said, just a bunch of stupid, rednecked, hunting, fishing goons, and they just, like you said, I don't think they care. I don't think they live in the real rural America, and they're just going to do what they want to do. But another thing I wanted to ask you about, maybe you've heard this, is Montana and Minnesota have both passed these astronomical laws that are really compelling, where essentially they're saying if we manufacture a gun in our state, you know what, federal government, you can't touch us. And there's a couple other, Texas and Utah as well, have plans to put forth these firearm acts. And I mean, I really don't think New York State is anywhere near ever going to pass something like that. But what does that say about America's support of the Second Amendment?
Well, it's interesting. I did read the Montana statute. I read the whole statute. It's not that long, and it's fascinating, along with what the governor of Texas is now talking about, and what other people are talking about in other parts of the country. Ronald Reagan used to say that America is an idea. We're not united by race. We're not united by a history that goes back more than 200 years, unlike places like Japan, let's say, that's united both by race, or China that's united by over 2,000 years of cultural history and so on. America is an idea. And what you are seeing, Amy, is the fraying of that idea. There's no longer a unanimous or even a majority consensus about what it means to be an American. And the Democrats, the liberal Democrats, the Nancy Pelosi Democrats in Congress, are increasingly saying, well, what 200 years of American history used to mean, what the Federalist Papers, let's say, that define the Second Amendment, what it meant to be an American citizen, those things are no longer important. We're going to tell you what it means to be an American citizen. We're going to tell you what the federal government can and cannot do. And it's an expansion of federal power, an expansion of government power that we have never seen before in American-style government. And in New York State, the huge shift that's occurred in the last few years is that it's not a Democrat versus Republican. This is not partisan politics in the sense of Democrat versus Republican in upstate New York. The huge shift is from upstate New York having a seat at the table to not having a seat at the table, and New York City really driving the political agenda. That's right. That's right. No. It really is historic. We are living in a fascinating time in American and New York State history when the relationships and the balance of power that have existed for 200-plus years are being swept away. And we're seeing both in Washington and in Albany. Well, Albany doesn't even count. It's really in New York City. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but Governor Patterson and the legislative leaders from New York, that's where they live, they don't even bother to come to Albany anymore. They've essentially relocated the center of government from Albany down to New York City. And that's why we here in upstate New York are getting the short end of almost every political debate.
You know what else I found really, really chilling? There's a provision, A7733, that says if I go to re-register my 45, that they may refuse to give me my permit if they believe that I present a threat to the public. Now, track back a little further to the Department of Homeland Security's little memo that nobody really wanted to see, that includes people who may pose a threat domestically to America as people who are going to tax protests, or people who want states to invoke the 10th Amendment and regain states' rights. And who's going to decide that? Who's sitting down there in New York City or in Albany or at my county clerk's office? Who's the one that's going to sit there and say, you know what, you're just a little too weird for me. I don't think I'm going to let you have your gun. And it's very vague, and it's frankly it's kind of frightening.
What you are seeing through that legislation is an assault on Second Amendment rights, which accompanies an assault on First Amendment rights, the ability of people to speak freely, an assault upon radio talk shows, just like yours, Amy, that where you are expressing ideas which a lot of folks think you should not have the right to express. And what you are seeing in the so-called hate legislation, in the Second Amendment legislation, is a slow but steady infringement on the rights of free citizens to speak and say what they want to say on the airwaves. And in the case of the Second Amendment, it's clearly an assault on the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. There's no question about it. And what's interesting about this is that the liberal Democrats who are pushing this agenda, both in Washington and Albany, no longer feel in any way embarrassed or restrained to say, yep, that's the agenda. This is what we want to do. And if you don't like it, you can pound salt because we've got the votes, we've got the power.
And as a woman, I think it's important. I don't believe that equality comes with birth control or abortion or the Equal Rights Amendment. For me, the ultimate equalizer is the gun. So any ladies out there who are firearms owners really should be concerned about this. You've been listening to the Amy McManus Show on AM 1480 WLEA. Thanks a lot, Bill, for spending the time with me.
Well, thank you for having me. And congratulations and good luck on the show.
Thanks a lot, Bill Nojay. You've been listening to the Amy McManus Show on AM 1480 WLEA. Coming up next, Brian O'Neill with Connections.